Hey everyone! So here's a model I made a few months ago actually, but I never actually finished editing the video because I got sidetracked doing other things, as I often do. I'm sure some of you can relate. And I also wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about during this video besides, the usual going through the whole process of whatever I'm doing, which you've already seen a few times. But now I do have something to talk about, which I'm very excited about. And that is that I saw a few weeks ago the module roadmap for 2025 for the Sculpt Paint and Texture module, which includes the features that they intend to bring to Blender in 2025. And I'll put a link to the whole thing in the description, but the feature I'm most excited about is multi-res attribute support, finally. So we're going to be getting color and textures in multi-res, which I think is a huge deal. I've probably said in the past, I think this is very important to have working with color or textures whenever you're doing any character work. And also, if you're doing anything for production, working with subdivision levels is very important. And it's, in my opinion, the biggest limitation right now, which you have with Blender compared to ZBrush. And now that I have sufficient experience sculpting in both software packages, it's very nice to see, the gap between the two closing. Some other nice features in the roadmap include sculpting layers, native support for sculpting layers, because in the past I've used add-ons for this, but having them natively is going to be very nice. And there's also mention of geometry nodes integration with multi-res as well, which I'm honestly not sure what that's going to entail in terms of possibilities, but I expect it's going to be very cool for people who know how to use geometry nodes, which at this time doesn't include me. They say that texture painting isn't currently a priority, which is unfortunate because I'd like to see texture painting improvements as much as anyone. But I understand why that is, because I think it'd take a lot more work to add big improvements like this to texture painting compared to sculpting. Sculpting doesn't need that much to bring it up to par with these major features, which are a big advantage in ZBrush, which we don't currently have. And besides, in like a big picture sort of way, I think it's worth considering that we still have a non-subscription based alternative for proper AAA texture painting with Marmoset Toolbag, which they've done amazing things with in terms of texture painting in version 5. And I'm not affiliated with them, but looks to me that they've done a lot of really great work with it. And again, very happy that they've not gone the subscription only route, which I hope they never will. So what I mean by all this is that at this time at least, we still have options, non-subscription based options for better texturing tools. And as such, they're also worth supporting. So yeah, there are a few other things in the roadmap, but again, the big one for me, that's multi-res attribute support. That's going to be amazing to have. And by the way, even though I don't use multi-res very much myself in its current state, I've already added to the Multisculpt add-on the option to use the current subdivision level, the current multi-res subdivision level instead of the base geometry. So as soon as that update comes, I think that's going to be very, very useful. Anyway, about this model you've been watching me sculpt, it's something I did for fun a while ago actually, but again, never finished editing the video. I wanted to make something more stylized again, which I've been enjoying doing lately, and I also wanted to give it a more complicated pose, sculpt in a pose, which again I said I like doing, so it's challenging for me because I haven't done this very much. And in general, for me, I think actually for most male artists at least, I think it's more difficult to make an appealing looking female character than it is a male character. So again, that's useful practice. And I actually wanted to make a new stylized female head base mesh, which I could use on future projects. So I also ended up retopologizing this head, and I actually already used it on that quick model I made to show off Multisculpt a couple months ago. So that's a variation of this head. That's very exciting trivia, I know. Anyway, onto the body. I've been having a lot of fun lately sculpting characters like this. I saw some videos recently of somebody sculpting a character like this, defining every muscle group using these rough base meshes and then posing that and then refining the entire model. So that's what I did with this one. So this is pretty much exactly like one would work with clay. It's not something I usually ever did in my work in the past 10-15 years. Always I'd start with like a base mesh with at least decent topology and, you know, have something resembling a body before I even started. But this, you know, this is a lot more fun, I'd say. And it's also great practice for understanding anatomy better, because sculpting a character in like a typical A pose or a T pose is, you know, you still have to know anatomy and understand it to create a model like that. But sculpting a pose, and especially like a more dynamic pose, really gives you a much better appreciation for what's going on underneath the skin and how each one of those muscles really contributes to that movement. And yeah, this approach is much slower. I wouldn't do this at work because there'd be no point to it. But I really should make an effort of doing this more often in my spare time, because this is very good practice for me, definitely. Because this really helps even when you're making a character in a rigging pose, when you have a better understanding of like the dynamics of the human body and the posture, your characters will just immediately feel more alive, even when they're standing still. It is often hard for me to find time and motivation to do this kind of thing outside of work hours, because during work hours I'm still making characters most of the time. And being in a creative field is amazing, but you know, once it becomes a profession, it doesn't feel quite the same. It doesn't have the same kind of excitement as when you're only working on passion projects all the time. But it's still amazing. I'm not complaining. I remember when I was a student, sometimes I'd work on projects which I couldn't sleep because of how excited I was to keep working on them, even though I wasn't very good at this yet. Or maybe because I wasn't, because I was always discovering new things with every project. I still kind of try to do that anytime I have the time, even in day-to-day work. If I'm given the time, I would try and research some new tool, find some new technique to do something better, or, you know, at least differently, hopefully better. And I kind of feel like it's been getting more and more necessary to keep up with newer tools. Or maybe it's just because I've been using Blender more and more, and Blender has this very dynamic, very rapid development and very dynamic market for third-party add-ons, where again, every now and then something new and very nice will come up. And so I have this backlog of things I want to learn or improve upon somehow whenever I can find the free time. And then of course I want to share that stuff here on this channel, which again has been fantastic motivation. And actually, since I finished this sculpt, I also made another full character in my spare time, which I want to use as an example for future videos, so stay tuned for that. And I will try not to take several months for the next video, but we'll see. I do have several ideas of things I want to record next, but I am also very much open to ideas as well. So if you want to see something, do let me know. And if I find it interesting, and also know enough about the topic, which I might because I've been doing this for a while, I'd love to do that too. Actually, the one thing which I've really wanted to do but could never find the time in the last few years is participate in community challenges, particularly the ones organized by Clint Jones, which I've mentioned before because they're so cool, and another one just came and went recently. And of course, it was as amazing and inspiring as the ones before that. Back in the old forum days, there was a contest called Dominance War, which was a lot of fun for character artists, for aspiring character artists like myself back in the day. And there were also these regular short challenges called the Hardcore Modeling Challenge on the CG Talk forums, which I'm guessing very few people watching this have heard of, because that forum I think had been dead for a while before it officially shut down, I think a couple years ago now. So yeah, I guess I'm sounding very old right now, but I miss when those were active communities. It's nice that there's a similar thing with Discords right now, but it's just not as centralized as it once was. It's not on one platform or like a few platforms where all the newbies and all the experienced professionals went, and it just felt really big and really connected. I don't know, I'm not very active on Discord, so I may be wrong about this, but it just doesn't feel like that to me from what I've experienced of it. But I actually do wonder how many people are here who have heard of CG Talk, and game artisans for that matter. Might be depressing to know, but still. Oh, and just now I copied in the toes from the Blender Studio base meshes, the realistic one. in case you were wondering where those came from. And now just also refining the ears a little bit. They're not going to be seen really behind the arms and the hair, but you know, for completeness sake. And now I'm joining together and remeshing some of these parts so they don't have that separation where they're separate meshes clearly. And you know, ideally that should be done in quad remesher or Z remesher because it gives the best results. And I did end up remeshing some of this in Z remesher inside ZBrush because I can. A lot of interesting shapes to sculpt in the feet and the legs once they're in motion. So again, this was a lot of fun. Even though this is, you know, somewhat stylized, so I'm not going into too much detail. In fact, I'm kind of overdoing it at this point, to be honest, but there it is. You've probably experienced this. Sometimes it's kind of hard to stop adding details and move on to the next stage. And now we're jumping ahead a little bit to where I've already added the clothing, but this is pretty basic poly modeling with just a shrink wrap modifier on top to make it stick to the surface of the body. And the eyelashes and the eyebrows were also added as geometry, which I just thought worked well for this kind of style. And the eye is the auto eye, which I got off Blender Market, which is just nice and easily customizable and works with this kind of style pretty well, I think. I've made realistic eyes, which I use in my realistic characters, but I didn't have a nice stylized one, so I didn't feel like making one from scratch right now, so got this one instead. And the hair you're watching me make right now was also pretty simple. It's just one hair system with a bunch of modifiers, which you can see over there on the right, and just a bit of styling to get it into roughly a nice shape. And at the very end, I used Multisculpt to be able to go into sculpt mode for all the objects together and tweak the proportions a little bit, which again, would have been very annoying to do without it. Anyway, that was pretty much it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the process, because I didn't really talk about it this time, feel free to leave me a comment. And if you like and/or subscribe for more, that'd be amazing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.